Hello, and thank you for joining me again today on the Finding Hope After Loss podcast. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. If you like the show, please leave a review or rating on Apple or Spotify. It only takes a moment and really helps the show reach more loss and infertility families. I will start recording for Season 3 soon. I've had a lot of interest in people being a guest on the show, and I think it's going to be an amazing season. If you are interested and have not yet reached out, please feel free to contact me on my social media at Journey for Jasmine or my email, Sarah with an H at journeyforjasmine.com. The business spotlight this week is from Abby with Bracelets for Angels. Here is what she had to say.
Hi, Sarah and the Finding Hope After Loss audience. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak about my organization, Bracelets for Angels. My name is Abby, and I'm the founder of Bracelets for Angels, a project that provides a wearable keepsake for those impacted by pregnancy and infant loss. Following my 2 consecutive pregnancy losses, I felt so alone and struggled with feeling as if my babies were not being remembered. I was most supported by the lost parent community on Instagram and was so touched by the internet strangers who were willing to honor and remember the lives of my babies, Iris and Meadow. One lost mama in particular, Alex, One Night Closer on Instagram, created a beautiful wind chime memorial with the names of angel babies hand-stamped onto each charm. This labor of love was the most helpful thing anyone had done for me in my grief. I needed to see that my babies were loved, important, and remembered. I was so amazed by what Alex had done in honor of her Darby girl, and I knew I wanted to do something similar one day to give back to the community that had taken such good care of me. I'd also found that I experienced immense comfort in wearing jewelry to honor my sweet babies, and was inspired to create the page Bracelets for Angels. I created the Instagram along with a Google form to request a bracelet, where I ask questions to learn about the baby I'll be honoring. Lost parents often share with me special songs, memories, colors, or symbols that connect them to their baby. When I create the bracelet, I'm careful to create an intentional space where I can focus on channeling love and connecting with the sweet little one that I am honoring. To date, I've shipped over 130 bracelets to families all across the United States and have a few more dozen in the works. This is a free service for those impacted by loss, though I've been continually blessed with many families who've made donations, making it possible for this project to continue. I've been incredibly touched by the fellowship, solidarity, and encouragement I found in the lost community with Bracelets for Angels. It's profoundly fulfilling to do such important work and to have built such a beautiful legacy for my angels. I know Iris and Meadow are a part of each bracelet that I create, and this product has been such a gift from them, empowering me along during my grief journey. If you're interested in requesting a memorial bracelet or supporting this project, please check out our Instagram at Bracelets for Angels, and I would love to connect with you.
Thank you so much, Abby, for sharing with us. Today I am talking with Sabrina, the TFMR Doula. She had a termination for medical reasons after her daughter showed complications that were not compatible with life. Her experience through the termination process was lacking in compassion, and she felt alone. This inspired her to create a community for other lost parents who have had to terminate for medical reasons. Hello, everyone. Today I am here with Sabrina. Sabrina, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, thanks, Sarah. I am a lost mom, and that's why I am here today to talk about my loss and how that also led me to support people who have been through this type of pregnancy loss and fertility struggles. And I live in Mexico, and that is where my loss happened as well. That's where we had to terminate our wanted pregnancy. And I can share that part of my story. And I'd love to, share how the pregnancy loss community and the TFMR pregnancy loss community is a place where people can find support, because it can be hard, really hard.
Yeah, definitely. I know that's one that I hear from a lot of people doesn't get the support it needs for sure. I mean, all loss in general doesn't, but
Oh yeah.
especially that. So do you mind talking a little bit about your loss?
Yeah. So I had been with my partner for 5, 6 years, and we had a daughter together. So she was 4 already at the time when we got pregnant again. And we had waited. We were going to get married, and we thought, oh, okay, well, let's just wait. I wanted to like have some beer at the wedding. And I was doing this whole fertility course. Some of your listeners may also listen to this podcast with Fertility Friday. So I had done a course with her, and I had learned all about the Justice method of like tracking and all the things, and I was doing all the supplements, and I thought, okay, I did it right this time, because my first pregnancy was a surprise and then wanted. But this time it's like, okay, we're gonna plan it out. We're gonna be married. I'm doing the supplements. I've changed my diet. I'm, trying to flow with my cycles, all the things, all the things. But our baby was still sick. So we found out during the 11-14 week scan, and that's when they check for some markers that could potentially show that the baby has genetic issues or other issues that can show up early on. And I was, I believe, 13, 12, like 12 weeks and 6 days at that scan. And the doctor got very quiet. It's that silence that you never want to hear, right before you're going to get bad medical news. And he was taking lots of pictures. And then he said, I'm really sorry, but your baby looks very sick. And then he started to explain the different things that he was seeing on the ultrasound. And he couldn't say exactly what was causing it. So we would have had to do more testing like an amniocentesis or the CVS, where they take a bit of the placenta and they try and find out the baby's genetics. But we could already see that she had this condition called hydrops, which is swelling, and it was all over the head, the torso, and the severity that it was already presenting, I imagine that even a few weeks later, we would have been able to see that there was swelling in her organs, maybe around the heart as well. And my oldest daughter was there. Someone else was also there with me, my sister-in-law. So they went in the other room, and we were told all this news. And what do you do with that news when you find out your baby is very sick?
Yeah, that's something no parent ever expects to hear. Do you feel like the doctors explained it to you thoroughly enough?
I do. He took his time. He showed us different pictures of what the ultrasound should look like, and then he showed us the screen again, and he explained what he was seeing and where the swelling was. I mean, we could all see it with our own eyes. And there was also the swelling was in a certain way on the back of the neck that they have another term for it. It's called cystic hygroma. So they're like cysts, and it was on both sides. Sometimes it's one. So I guess it's called like bilateral. I mean, I know all these terms now that I never knew before, and I didn't know them at the time that he was telling me all these things. I didn't know what hydrops was. I didn't know what cystic hygroma was. He started, saying, oh, it could be, from Turner's syndrome. I don't think I had even heard of that before. And we still really don't know what the underlying cause. I mean, we could tell that she was sick. We could see that she was sick. And he said with the severity that was already presenting that he thought her heart would stop soon. So I've heard that a diagnosis like this is very similar psychologically and emotionally to the moment that someone is told, I'm sorry, there's no heartbeat. So it's a very similar shock and grief. I mean, there was anticipatory, I've learned these terms now, right? There was anticipatory grief because he was saying she probably won't survive. And he was a specialist. He's a maternal fetal medicine doctor. So we were already, at the highest level of checking, I guess you could. And he had a pretty good ultrasound machine, and it was very clear. I could see it. I could see it.
That has to make it so hard too, to know that she's still there now, but that
Oh
she won't make it, further. I mean,
yeah.
yeah, definitely. It's like two different kinds of horrible grief all
Oh yeah.
at once.
Yeah.
So were you given any options, or was it, just you? I mean, what were your options, I guess, is the question.
Yeah, it's like no good option at that point. Um, After very thoroughly explaining, then uh, he did bring up termination, and he was very kind about it as an option. And he said, I don't know what your religious or philosophical beliefs are, but termination is an option. Um, and I also asked him, and if I continue the pregnancy, and he said, if you decide to continue the pregnancy, you need to come see me weekly because this is now a high risk pregnancy. So it was also a diagnosis for me.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask too. Is that something that would put your health at risk as well?
Yeah. Yeah. I found out more about that on my own after we went home, and I was Googling and finding every single research paper I could get my hands on that wasn't behind a paywall. uh, and I learned that the condition hydrops in the baby, like fetus in utero, can also cause what they have termed mirror syndrome. So it can cause the same type of swelling in the organs of the pregnant person. So I was at risk of developing a type of hydrops as well.
I actually didn't know that at the end before we lost my daughter. She had high drops as well, and I didn't
Oh,
realize that that's something that yeah, that could affect your health as well.
oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, it's so devastating.
So I'm not familiar with the laws in Mexico, but are there deadlines that you have to terminate before a certain week?
Yeah, that's part of my story. So, the little that he did explain about if we decided to terminate, um, or, induce the pregnancy, I suppose, uh, he said, if you go with that option, you need to decide now, which is just
Like not even giving you
devastating on
time to
top
think
of
about it.
already horrific moment that we were in. Um, and I also asked him, well, can it be done in this state? And he said, if you want it done in this state, which I live in the state of Morelos, which is outside Mexico City, it's like their, capital city state, kind of like DC. But I live in a small state right outside of that state. And he said, if you want to get it done in this state, you have to bring your case to an ethics committee. And I'm shaking my head. Um, and, that was the moment that I realized, okay, other people have a lot of opinions about this, and they want to control this, and they want to make this decision for me. And I just knew right then, no. It was a huge no in my body. Just no, I'm not taking my case through an ethics committee to have some random doctors that I don't even know. They're not even my doctors. They're just the doctors on that committee at that hospital. I mean, he did say with the severity that it's presenting, like they would likely say yes, but even that wasn't good enough for me. Like likely, what is that? 90%?
And you shouldn't have to go plead your case.
Right. Or maybe they would say yes because, I'm a well-off white woman. Like that did not sit well with me.
No, I mean, I completely understand that. And I don't think anybody should, no matter, race, religion, any of it, nobody should have to go plead their case to an ethics committee over something they don't even want to have to decide in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then,
I mean, imagine if we had to do that every time we needed to get a DNC.
Yeah.
The way things are going, that could happen.
It's definitely one of those slippery slopes that, you may think, I mean, obviously we don't think that, but some people may think it's okay for us to do it in these cases. But then suddenly it becomes okay to do it in these cases over here. And then suddenly it's okay for them to just demand it everywhere. And it's not okay anywhere.
No. And, there have been cases of people who they've had a miscarriage. So like the baby's heart is not beating any longer. And they go to a pharmacy, like I think this has happened at CVS, or I don't remember which ones. And the pharmacist said, I'm sorry, I'm not going to prescribe that because it's against my religion.
Like, okay, but the baby is gone and now my health is at risk.
I mean, they're literally pleading their case right there at the pharmacy counter.
Yeah, it's crazy to me to hear these stories. Like, how could this actually happen to people,
Yeah.
So then I'm guessing you did not go in front of the ethics committee.
Yeah, because it was a big no for me. I just couldn't put myself through that. I mean, we were already in the middle of this medical crisis. And I asked him, so who should I go to, or can you give me a number? And he kind of skirted around that. I think because of laws, he didn't want to be part of my abortion care. It's really, really sad because I know that he does do DNCs and other procedures because he also works in a hospital. And then he has this private clinic or doctor's office. So he said, because he knew who my OBGYN was, and he said, talk to your gynecologist. But that was like the end of it. Like he couldn't help us further.
See, and that's so sad that, doctors have to not provide information because they're worried about getting in trouble themselves.
Yeah.
It puts like everybody in a bind.
Oh, it's poor medicine. And it's not that he practices poor medicine. It's that these laws are forcing him to practice poor medicine.
So then was your OB able to help you?
Yes, she was. And that's a whole nother story that I'm going to eventually, I have my story written. I just need to edit it. And I want to publish it as a memoir. Just the whole way it all went down and everything that happened and all the steps. But for this podcast, I will say that she was able to give us a number, and we did have to go out of state. So we had to go into Mexico City state. And that was the time frame that my original doctor, the one who gave us the diagnosis, was aware of and thinking of, because the cutoff is 14 weeks. So it's really just first trimester abortions are allowed, like no questions asked. So you don't have to explain. It doesn't have to be a special case. There doesn't need to be, rape or the person's health is failing. There doesn't need to be any other reasons. Although, who's to say what reasons and when, and anyway, So we ended up going to Mexico City, and it was a good experience. I mean, I was well taken care of body wise, but mentally and emotionally, no, I was not taken care of at an abortion clinic, which deals with mostly lifestyle abortions. I guess, there's really no good words for like any of these
Right.
experiences, but let's just call it a lifestyle abortion or abortion for other reasons. Although I believe there's always medical reasons in the mix because it's a medical issue. But so they put me in this box of like, remember your reasons. We had a therapist. There was a counselor there who met us before and after. And I kept saying, do you have any grief resources? And she was like, grief? I mean,
My gosh.
she eventually did get back to me. She sent me some stuff a few days later, but I was like, a day late. What's the saying? A day late, a buck short.
Yeah. Like,
It was
shouldn't
just
you have
like,
had these like readily available, you know? Especially
mhm.
for, I mean, no matter what your reason is for having to terminate a pregnancy, there's going to be
Yeah.
grief there.
Oh
And
yeah.
so, that's definitely something they need to have available for each and every person that comes in there, whether they use it now or need it later or never use
Yeah.
it. Like it needs to be given to them.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely there was a lack of grief informed care that day. I remember the nurses just handing me tissues and then just turning their back on me. And I mean, how hard is it to say I'm sorry for your loss?
Wow. It's just
And
basic.
yet I understand that they don't want to place meaning on other people's experiences. But I think I assumed that the head doctor who did our procedure, who did the DNC, or vacuum or whatever, there's so many different ways that it can happen, who did the procedure for us, he was aware, and we had shown him the ultrasounds, and he said, I'm so sorry you're in this position, I'm so sorry about your baby. He had said that, and I just assumed that he was going to tell his staff, but they were unaware of the emotional situation that my husband and I were in that day. And I've also seen this in people who go through early miscarriage, or even maybe even later if they're not grief informed at that hospital, and to them it's just another day at work, another procedure, check the bleeding, check the blood pressure, on to the next patient. But for us, this is a life changing,
It is.
horrendous loss of a child.
And it's so hard too when, you've just lost, like, you've been through one of the most heartbreaking things you could ever go through. And then there's just people there just acting like it's a normal day, like, and you're just like, okay, but my world just stopped and you just, like, everything else just keeps going like nothing happened.
Yeah, it felt like, I mean, I know this term is, kind of overused, gaslighting, but it kind of felt like gaslighting, like they're talking to me in this way or interacting with me in this way. And I was like, I tried, I tried to express to the counselor, I tried to express to the receptionist. I tried to, ask for a separate room with some of the nurses. I tried to express my grief and what I was going through, but they just, I don't know, it was just like talking to a wall.
It's just like you were talking, but like nobody was listening.
Yeah. Yeah. So them talking back to me and then their actions and their reactions, I just felt like, okay, am I overreacting? Like, should I just be like, yay, women's empowerment. I got my abortion today. Yay. I mean, it was not that experience.
Yeah. So then if you were not given, the type of grief resources that you needed, how did you deal with your grief?
Hmm. I went down another Google hole, looking and trying different terms because no one ever mentioned um pregnancy loss even. They didn't really even call it pregnancy loss except for our MFM doctor, the original doctor. Because I went to see him for a checkup afterwards, and again, he was saying, I'm so sorry for your loss. So there, it was seen there. So I kept looking for, pregnancy loss, because even though those around me that day were not treating me like it was, I felt in my heart, this is a pregnancy loss. you know, I was tracking my cervical fluid. I was taking my temperature. We like planned, I, you know, what knew when my ovulation was. We were planning for this baby. But then all of a sudden, just because it's an abortion, it's not a pregnancy loss. That didn't make any sense to me. Didn't make any sense to my head or mind or heart.
Yeah, definitely not. It's
No,
definitely a
no,
loss.
no. So I kept looking for pregnancy loss support. And then I also looked for abortion grief support, but that did not take me down the road that was helpful at all. It was just very religious places telling me that I should repent and I would be forgiven. And I was like,
Like,
that
oh wow,
is
this is helpful.
that is not what I was experiencing. And I know that some people do experience regret or guilt after, but I think that that can happen with all loss, right? We regret not having more time with that baby or that person. We feel guilty for maybe, eating something that we feel like maybe it caused that, or earlier actions in our 20s, we partied really hard and then maybe that made this happen, or who knows, all these different thoughts and feelings that come up around loss, and especially pregnancy loss, because it's happening through our body. So what did I do wrong? What did my body do wrong to make this happen? That thought can be really hard, and we need a place to process those thoughts. So I was looking for a place to process those thoughts. And so, I'm just trying all these different Google keywords, right? So the pregnancy loss, but then I would go to the websites and they would say miscarriage and stillbirth, miscarriage and stillbirth, miscarriage and stillbirth and infant loss, miscarriage and stillbirth. And I'm like, well, I didn't have a miscarriage. I had to choose to have a DNC and induce this pregnancy. It's also not a stillbirth because I wasn't that far along. So I didn't feel like I fit in any of those categories. And there are people who go through TFMR, which is a word that or an acronym, one that we're using, termination for medical reasons. And some people who go through TFMR, they also do use the term stillbirth if their baby was born, after a certain number of weeks. But even that can still be like a medical classification or classification for whether they get a death certificate or not. And anyway, so all those things were happening when I was landing on in the pregnancy loss spaces. And then the abortion grief was not taking me anywhere good. And so then I started to put like termination, and that would get me to like some abortion places, but it wasn't getting to the grief part. So I think I finally put something like termination for fetal anomaly. And then I found some groups online at that point. So this was 2018, and the baby center forum was pretty good. It was pretty active. There was a TFMR portion of that forum, and then people in there, they were talking about other resources, and they said that there was a Facebook group called Ending a Wanted Pregnancy. And so I joined that Facebook group, and that was definitely life-changing because, well, after finding the baby center and then ending a wanted pregnancy, and then this whole world of acronyms opened up to me. I was like, oh, this is called a TFMR. Oh, people are talking about their diagnosis and then ending a wanted pregnancy. Oh, people are saying this and this, and they're saying my grief, and they're saying honoring my baby, and they're saying this is my baby's name. And all of those things, I finally felt like, oh, okay, I've found my little safe place on the internet. I've found my place with other people who have been through this. And that also helped with the isolation and silencing around it, because, I would still look at broad baby loss places and not see TFMR mentioned, but I would say, okay, and I know it is mentioned here. So go back into that Facebook group, make some friends there, get that support.
I
But
think
it
it's
was scarce.
helpful
It was,
too.
yeah, it was just a little, but life-changing.
And that's, sad that it's so hard to find those places when you desperately need them, and to feel like you're all alone, and then you're, trying to search for it, finding all these things that are not helpful and could make it worse. But then you finally find, that group, and it's just so nice to have other people who have been through your experience that understand what it is that you're going through, and acknowledging the grief and acknowledging the loss.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I imagine people who, experience the grief of fertility struggles, when they finally find, a good fertility group or place where they can speak about all of that, I imagine they feel similar.
So what made you decide to start advocating for, talking about this issue more?
When did I start talking about it? I think it was around 2020, although I knew when I was in that clinic, when I was sitting alone in the recliner in the pre-op and post-op, I knew right then that I wanted to support people like me, because I realized, where's my support person, or where's the support, or where's the language around this, or what is going on? Um, and so I thought, okay, well, I guess uh maybe one day I'll be an abortion doula. That was my thought while it was happening. And I had always wanted to be a doula. Um, but my older daughter was still really little, and I still wanted to have another child. And I thought, okay, well, maybe that's something that I'll do in like 10 years, when they're both like 10 and 14 or something like that, when they're a bit older and I can go and do that. Because I still do want to, go in person. But the way that my grief support has evolved, has turned into all virtual, which is great because we're all spread out all over the world and we can still support each other. So yeah, so in 2020, I started my Instagram account, the TFMR Doula, and I did a baby loss advisor course training. I still have to finish that. And I started my own Facebook group because I had found that Facebook group so helpful. And I remember when I posted in stories, I said, hey, does anyone want to join this group? And people were like throwing their emails at me. They're like, yes, let's do it.
I love that though. I mean, because there's clearly a need for it. So have you
Yeah.
had, have you been able to connect with a lot of people that, had similar experiences to you of the not getting the support or the acknowledgement that they needed?
Oh yeah, thousands. And other thousands do get good grief support through this type of pregnancy loss and through other pregnancy loss experiences. which gives me a lot of hope. I see, okay, here in this hospital, it happens like this. So it can happen. Like, it's not that hard. They created this program and it happens like this. And the nurses say, I'm sorry for your loss. And when they hand the tissues, they don't turn their back on the person. They hand them the tissues. I mean, it's there's such small, super significant changes, but small, very small. But it means the world to us when we're going through this.
Yeah. And they're not, yeah, like you said, they're small, they're not hard. Anybody can do them. It's free, it's kind, but it makes a world of difference.
Yeah. It doesn't take any longer.
Yeah, it really does. It probably takes longer to turn your back than to just,
Well, I think it actually took longer for them to try and like smash me into their box on that day, because when I was trying to explain something to one of the nurses, they said, "Oh, come with me in this little room." And she took me in this little room and she was like, "Is somebody forcing you to do this?" And I was like, "What?"
No, that's not what I'm trying to say.
No, I'm just trying to let you know this baby was wanted. I wasn't able to articulate it that day, but I wanted to say that so that they would treat me as a grieving mother, so that they would treat me appropriately, so that they would know my whole story. And I thought, oh, if they know my whole story, maybe they'll treat me in a certain way. I mean, I made this assumption.
Right. I mean, I don't think it's a crazy
Obviously it didn't work
assumption.
out for me, but for other people it does, to share their story with the nurse. There are so many kind nurses, so many kind doctors, and there are amazing programs where they have a bereavement suite, where they stay overnight with the baby, where they have a cuddle cot, where they bring in the Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep photographers who take like the maternity or newborn photos. I didn't get any of that.
Were you even
When
offered
I
any?
asked them offered, no, nothing was offered. Everything that I got, I had to ask for. And every time I asked for something, they were like, "Oh, we don't usually do that. We'll see if we can."
Like, okay, I don't think I'm being unreasonable in asking for these things. Yeah, man, you just realize in hearing it, how far we still have to go.
Yes. Yes, we do. And I think that by getting better grief support for TFMR and maybe all abortion experiences, all the people who wish to have that support, that will also bring better support for all pregnancy loss. And it's better support for the whole reproductive care situation, just to be more grief informed, more trauma informed, because fertility, it is trauma. A lot of the things that people in your audience go through, it's very traumatic for the body and the mind and the waiting.
It is. And then we're just kind of thrown out there like, sorry that happened, but get back to normal because we don't want to deal with your grief and just be normal again,
Right? It's like, well, we did our part, we did the procedure, we did the retrieval, we did the this, we did the that. Like, your uterus looks fine.
Like, okay, so you're just gonna like leave me out here
Okay.
by myself?
Okay, I'm better now. I'm magically cured of all of my feelings and humanity and grief.
Yes,
Thanks.
I'm not supposed to be sad anymore. Like moving on with my life. Yeah, it's crazy. And I feel like, like you kind of touched on that it all really depends on your particular doctor, whatever hospital you're at. Some are great, some are terrible. And it's kind of just wherever you end up. You don't know how it's going to be until you're going through it yourself.
Yeah, yeah. In the UK, they talk about the postcode lottery. So you could hit it rich. You could get, the good hospital that has the bereavement suite and bereavement midwives, or you could just happen to go to the hospital that doesn't have any of those programs, and they're like, well, what the heck do we do with you? We only deal with live babies here. Okay, but it's 1 in 4.
Right?
One in
Like
four, one in
everybody
four
should have that.
pregnancies. Yes. Yes, that is such a huge, like 25%, or maybe even higher, 30. Like 1 in 3 of your patients will be going through something like this, or has gone through something like this, or will go through something like this. That's really high. That's a
It is.
really high number.
Yeah, definitely not an issue that should just be brushed off as, oh, it just happens to, so many people, and
Yeah.
come back when
Yeah.
you're pregnant again. We'll help you
Oh,
then. Like,
oh.
really?
If it happens.
Yes.
Oh.
So what kind of advice do you have for people that are, facing this decision to have to, or who have been given this diagnosis and have to make that decision on whether to terminate or not?
So in the place where you're having to make the decision, it's okay to feel like there are no good options. It's okay to grieve whichever way you decide to go. Because if we would have continued the pregnancy, and maybe let's say even if she would have survived, but maybe now I'm raising a medically fragile child, there's still grief there. And it doesn't mean that you love your baby any less. And if you need to make this medical choice for your baby or for yourself, it's also okay to grieve the loss and know that the decision was what you needed. Really, really tough. And also make sure to find TFMR friendly places to do your grieving. Some in-person support groups exist. There's more and more online. So you can come into my Facebook group if you've been through this, or if you are, making the decision, already have a date set. We do let people into the group as well as they're waiting for their procedure. And that has been very helpful for the people who find me that early. I feel like it's a miracle when they find me that early. But there's more and more awareness around this acronym, this term. So people who work in, social work, therapy need to know this term. All medical people need to know this term, because it happens way more than we know, because it's not talked about, because people are like, oh, you had an abortion. Okay, well, next baby or something. I don't know. People have a lot of ideas, right? But I guess my advice would be, remember your heart, remember your grief, remember your baby. That's what really matters. Because people have a lot of opinions, and people have even more opinions about everything parenting and mothering and women. Anyone who's not like a white male, they have a lot of opinions about what we should or should not do. And we really have to do what's in our hearts. And I think that that's like the crux of this type of pregnancy loss, is that we really have to dig deep and feel that and really remember that almost every day of our lives. But it can help you get through. I have grief circles as well. So those are live. You're in a group of other 5 or 6 other people, and we stay together for 3 months. So that's the higher support that I also offer, or one-on-one as well. If you feel like it's just so private or so raw, a lot of people like to meet with me one-on-one. It's really helpful. I had a postpartum doula as well, and that was really helpful after my loss, to have someone to talk to.
And I think those doulas aren't really utilized as much as they should be.
Mm-hmm.
Like everybody could benefit from having one personally,
Yes.
but
Yes.
so I love that you're able to offer all of that support, whether it's the one-on-one, whether it's the group setting, whether it's, the smaller group, the bigger group, like there's,
Yeah.
different levels for everybody depending on what they need.
Yeah. Yeah. On my website, I also have a couple mini courses if you'd like to start there, like some journaling, meditation. I have a connecting with your baby, like continual connections with your baby course as well, because I think that that's really important with pregnancy loss in general, but also with TFMR specifically. Because if we can connect with our baby and that love, then all the noise and all the opinions and all the negativity, it's like, when I connect with the love that I have for my baby and like her love for me, people can say whatever the hell they want because she's my baby forever and I love her and she sends me signs and whatever other people want to say about it, they can go and say it, but not on my page.
I do. I love that way of looking at it though, because you're right. That's really all that matters. And, all these people have all these opinions that you didn't love your baby if you did this, but it's actually the ultimate love that you are showing your baby by doing this. And I think people don't understand that it is out of love. It is out of compassion. It is, there's so much love there.
Thank you, Sarah.
So is there anything else that you would like to share or add?
I think if people are looking for those resources, they can go to my website. They're all on there at the TFMRdoula.com. And just remember the love. Even on the days where it hurts so much, to remember the love. It's something that helped me a lot. And I didn't understand when people said this at first. It took me a couple years to understand this, that they would say, remember that the grief comes from love. The love doesn't come from grief. The grief comes from love. So even reframing the tough grief moments as, oh, it's because I love them so much.
I love that. I love that perspective. I think that's a great way to look at it. And yeah, definitely the grief is because of the love.
Yeah.
But there's that quote that I can't remember exactly how it is, but it's like, without love, there can't be grief or something like that.
Yeah, that makes so much sense.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
took
it's
me a while to
the
understand
phrase.
it too.
Yeah, it takes a while. So I guess that would be my last, little piece of inspirational advice, that if you're in that place where you just don't understand it yet, that's okay too. It's okay to not understand the enormity of this experience. And if your pregnancy loss has been a TFMR, then there's even other enormous layers to work through. So it will take its time. And it's okay to give it its time.
Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your story and all of your wonderful words of wisdom with us.
Oh, thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Sabrina, for sharing your story with us. I still can't believe that you would have had to go in front of an ethics committee just to get permission to do something you didn't even want to do in the first place. As we talked about, it just goes to show that there's still a lot of progress left to be made in women's healthcare in general. Women should be able to be in control of their own health and make decisions about their own body, and taken seriously when we feel something is wrong. We do know our body best. No one knows our body better than we do. And I think it can be really hard for those in the TFMR community to feel that they fit into the lost community sometimes. As Sabrina mentioned, most of the resources she found were for miscarriage or stillbirth. She really had to dig and keep looking to find the information she needed. And I'm so glad that she has now created this community so other TFMR parents don't feel alone. Be sure to check out her group if you have gone through a TFMR. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. If you like the show, please leave a review or rating on Apple or Spotify. It only takes a moment and really helps the show reach more loss and infertility families. Thank you so much for tuning in, and remember, we are all in this together.